Chair Ward, I went ahead and started the recording.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm calling this meeting of the Organized Residential Waste and Recycling Committee meeting to order. It's Monday, November 9th at 6:03 p.m. I'm Stephen Ward, chair of this committee. The first order of business is to call roll. Lorraine, will you please call the roll?
Chair Ward.
Present.
Vice Chair Green.
Present.
Vice Chair Green.
Present.
Member Adams.
Here.
Member Borman. Member Brinker.
Here.
Member Brown. Not sure if Member Brown is on the phone, so I'm going to go ahead and put both of these callers as allowed to talk. Member Brown? Member Frazier?
Here.
Member Hubka? Here. Member Kawanabe?
Here.
Member Labe? Here. Director DeAndrea?
Here.
Thank you. Just one administrative note. Cheryl Stewart, who was one of our members, sent a resignation letter today, so she will not be joining us in the future. Just to let members of the committee and the public know that. So we have an informational item on the agenda that covers the status of panelists and attendees and procedures for voting on motions. Does staff want to fill us in on what the intent was on this?
Yeah, can you go over, Lorraine, the specifics on how Zoom works in relation to that panelist versus attendee?
Sure. So I did double check with our city clerk's office, and when you dial in as an attendee, we move them over as a panelist if they are part of the committee, or in some cases like Member Brown, who will only dial in, and I can move her over if I know what phone number she's calling from. And it's my understanding that this is not live, as is the city council. So we do not move others over because it's not live if they are just part of the forum, the public forum. Did I miss anything, Maria?
And then after let's say we have somebody to speak at the public section, you put them on as a panelist, but then do you take them off again after they've given their testimony?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any questions from the committee on that, or I think that's about the only way we've figured out how to do it. So
there's no way to have someone be on the attendees and give them the ability to speak without moving them to panelist?
Lorraine?
No, Vice Chair Green. They can speak. We just have to ask them to unmute during that time frame as an attendee.
Then why would you move them to panelist?
You wouldn't move them to a panelist unless.
Oh, okay. I thought that's what you said. All right.
No, I apologize if that was misunderstood.
No, thank you. That's how I thought it was intended to work. Thanks.
So really, you don't have to do anything, Lorraine. Is that correct? So if we have a member of the public speaking, we just ask them at the appropriate time to speak and they unmute and that's it.
That's correct, Maria.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. And then as far as voting on motions, we're recommending that Lorraine take the vote. So she'll call out each person's name. If Chair Ward, you want to do like an informal kind of thing with the hand raising, you certainly can. But I think for formal votes, the city clerk's office is recommending that we actually call out the names, and Lorraine would keep track on a piece of paper, and then that's what will go into the official minutes. So that would be our recommendation to you.
I don't have an objection to that, generally speaking, but it seems kind of pointless with a unanimous vote to call individuals by name, which is the last couple of times we had that. For the purposes of organization purposes, on the other hand, if everybody's raising their hand and there's 11 members and only 2 dissenters, I don't understand why we wouldn't just call their names, because we call the roll at the beginning of the meeting, and it would be pretty easy to see who is dissenting. But I'm willing to cooperate. That's just the reason why I was running it that way. It just seemed a heck of a lot more efficient to me.
Yeah, and feel free to do that, you know, as you, just to take a feel for the direction of the group, but for formal actions, I think that's what they're recommending.
Okay. All right, so I think that covers the 2 items. If you see a difference in the way we're conducting the votes tonight, that is explained. So our next agenda item is approval of minutes. There were some updates to the minutes that came up during the discussion of the minutes that would be included with the packet, and I will give the floor to Vice Chair Green to discuss those.
Oh, I just had a correction to the first action. It credited the motion to me and then second to Marcy Brown, but that should be credited as moved by member Hubka and seconded by member Adams. I just did a friendly amendment to organize the thoughts of it. The description of it, what was moved is accurate, but the motion was originally member Hubka and seconded by Adams.
Lorraine, did that change appear in the minutes that were attached to the notice?
No, the one that I see currently posted still says it was moved by me and seconded by member Brown. So that should be corrected.
Give me just one moment. Sorry, Carson.
No problem.
These are the minutes from the October 26th meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, the one that I facilitated since you couldn't be there.
And
Yeah, I see that too. So we can certainly change that.
okay, I've got it now.
It's the first motion under new business.
Got it. Sorry about that. Okay. So Carson, did you want to make a motion to approve with that?
Sure.
change?
Yeah, so I move to approve the minutes as long as they're corrected to state what I just said.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll second that. Who took that second? That's Kanji.
Sure.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. We will vote now. Lorraine, will you please call the roll?
Chair Ward,
Aye. Yes.
Vice Chair Green,
Yes.
Member Adams,
Yes.
Member Boardman, Member Brinker,
Yes.
Member Brown, Member Frazier,
Yes.
Member Hubka,
Yes.
Member Kawanabee,
Yes.
Member Labe.
Yes.
I think Marcy was able to put her hand up. But she probably can't unmute.
I see her on the list of panelists with her hand raised, but I'm not hearing her. Sounds like we might be facing the same technical gremlin that we had last time. So that brings us to the next agenda item, which is recognition of public comment. At this time, if any members of the public would like to comment, you may use the raise hand function or speak. I see 2 telephone listeners listed, but it looks like they've been bumped to panelist.
Is that the same phone number, the twice?
I'm willing to begin to speak. I'm Melinda Ellswick. I don't have a raise hand function on my computer, so.
Please go ahead.
All right. I just wanted to speak briefly in favor of the single hauler initiative. I believe for environmental purposes, if no other reason, it would be good for the city to have fewer big trucks rumbling up and down the street every Wednesday, and would save wear and tear on our streets and alleys. And I've also read through the Q&A that's attached to the agenda that comes from Waste Management and Republic. And as an environmental issue, I noticed that Waste Management captures the methane from its landfill and Republic flares it off, which is like a pollutionary thing. So that's maybe in favor of Waste Management. Also in the cost section of the thing, I'm currently with Republic and paying about $30 a month. So the idea of paying $20 to $24 a month would be a savings, especially since Republic is likely to raise the rates again after the first of the year. So that's, and like I say, a nice savings. Waste Management doesn't raise its rates as fast as Republic. So, and then finally, just a thought, if trash hauling is to be included with the water bill, only a small part of which is water, I wonder if the committee or the council would consider the idea of billing everybody in the city monthly rather than quarterly, to allow households to spread the cost out, make it easier for them to afford. Currently, the trash companies also bill quarterly, but not necessarily on the same schedule as the city. So to avoid sticker shock or whatever for people that are struggling to pay all of that, like I say, it's just a thought. And thank you for your attention and allowing members of the public to comment on this.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who have comments? Hearing and seeing none, that will conclude that portion of our agenda. Next item is a return to last week's or the business of the October 26th meeting. I did have the opportunity to review that meeting. Thank you once again, Vice Chair Green, for covering for me for that meeting. Some of you may or may not know that I, just on a personal note, work in elections. So the last month has been extremely stressful for me. So I was not able to attend that meeting or meet any of my other city obligations that week, but I'm back now. So let's move on to the new business. The first item is to discuss administrative fees and opt-out fees. Maria, you have the floor.
Thank you. And if you all recall, we started on this presentation talking through the fees discussion. So I will pick up kind of where we left off. So we had talked through kind of the base, all the different base costs from the two proposers. This was how we had gotten to the assuming a certain percentage for opt-out, and that's how I based my totals on it. So we got up to the administrative fee and talked a little bit about the elements that and assumptions that went into this in terms of salaries for staff, the number of staff, what those costs would be, along with the vehicle, communications costs for putting out mailings. And so that equated to $2.05 per household per month. And then we got up basically to the tipping fee. So this is where we left off last meeting. So we had estimated, based on the volume of trash that the city collectively or the households collectively would dispose of, would equate to about $350,000 per year. If you recall, at the request of two of the proposers that I talked with prior to issuing the RFP, they suggested that we take the tipping fee out of the equation and make it a cost that would just be transferred through from the city to make it apples to apples. Now that's something we can certainly reconsider if we issue a new RFP, but that's the way it was set. So the $350,000 estimate is what it would cost if we, all that garbage was taken to the waste management site on Union Avenue. And so we do get a small percentage of that. I think it's 50 cents per ton that would come back to the city, and in the form of, we call that a waste service fee, I believe. And that money goes into the general fund. I've provided some memos or some feedback on this prior. That amount goes back into the general fund. But another idea would be is that it could potentially offset this $350,000 cost. But that equates out, if you do the math, equates out to $3.12 per household per month. So if you look at the entire cost, we'll work from left to right here. So the pay as you throw, which is the 32, 64, or 96 gallon. We've got Republic Service versus Waste Management here. So that's the cost to the hauler, those fees based on the different pricing. Then you add in that admin fee of $2.05. Again, these are all monthly costs. Then the tipping fee of $3.12 gets you to these total prices here for either, again, the citizen could choose a 32 gallon, a 64 gallon, or a 96 gallon garbage container plus a 96 gallon recycling. So what you get for these prices is weekly trash service, bi-weekly, every other week, recycling collection, the 2 times per year, the large item pickup, and then the either composting or the yard waste collection would be on top of that. So then the other option was the uniform containers, where everybody gets a 96 gallon garbage container, regardless of your household size. You also get a 96 gallon recycling container. So there's really just one price there for all properties. Then you add in, again, the same admin fee and the same tipping fee to get to a total of $23.71 versus $24.06. So you can see those all now in relation to each other. So at the very low end would be waste management with a 32 gallon container at $20.61, ranging up to a high of, it looks like Republic with a 96 gallon service at the pay as you throw option, just under $25. So I'll just pause there and ask any questions, because I know that's a lot of numbers to look at. I'm sorry, let me just pull up. I can't see everybody's hands. I've got the full screen going. Any questions? Okay, none?
No,
All right,
I do have a question.
Okay.
Is the proposal then that the opt-out would only be the admin fee?
The intent, yeah, the way that I had said it, well, again, like we had talked about last time, Republic Services still wants to charge that. They would want to charge a minimum of $15.80 per month per household, regardless, or I guess they would want to charge the city $15.80 per month, regardless of whether that household used the service or not, which I think is non-negotiable. But the opt-out would not have to pay, under my scenario, would not have to pay any hauler costs. They would pay the admin fee, but not the tipping fee, because again, they're paying for their tipping fee through their own service. They would pay for the admin fee. I'll just jump back here, because we would have communication costs associated with that, as well as potentially some of those code enforcement costs. So again, that's up to the committee as to what your recommendation might be, but that was my proposal and the way I laid it out in the RFP to the vendors.
Thank you.
Okay.
I guess I have one more question, just kind of on the salaries in general. I mean, these salaries for like billing specialist, admin assistant, you said that that's including salary, benefits, and taxes. So what does that end up being, like actual pay to the person? Like, just to have perspective, because most of the time when I see salaries, it's not a number that includes everything else.
Sure. Let me try and pull that up at our next, or when you guys are discussing, I'll pull up the spreadsheet and see if I can find just the salary portion of that.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll get through this and then I'll pull up that spreadsheet.
Sure.
So I don't have to close my screen.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Even if it comes later, I'm just curious. It would just help to have perspective on
Yeah,
it.
just perspective, like, exactly. I want to say, I mean, it's significant. So I got these numbers from HR and the benefits are pretty up there. So I'll find that in just a little bit here. So I'll jump ahead then to penalties. And so this is definitely a lot of words, but if you recall, this was actually a table that was in the RFP. And so just to re-educate yourselves. So for this first one, let's say it says commencement of collection prior to 7 a.m. or continuance after 6 p.m. except with written permission. So if they are working, let's say they start at 6:30 and are dumping trash, we would be able to penalize them $1,000 per incident. If you can see that over on the far right. That's also for each truck on each route shall be considered a separate incident. So let's say they started 4 trucks, we would charge them $4,000 if they started before 7 a.m. So I thought that was a pretty strong, hopefully, penalty to not have them do that. And if you see the middle there, the kind of the why or the rationale behind that is that the city's noise ordinance prohibits that type of vehicle from operating either before 7 a.m. or 6 p.m. So just as a reminder, so failure to clean up, collect, or clean up spilled materials. I know at one of the public open houses, we had some concerns from neighbors, not only kind of right in the vicinity of Union Avenue, but kind of some of the neighborhood streets where materials would either blow off of the vehicles or they might spill fuel or oil or that sort of thing. So that would cover all of that. Missed pickups. So that would be $150 per household per incident. Resolution of customer issues, $150. Leaking fluids, I guess that was called out separately. Collection from households on any day other than per the predetermined route. So this will keep them, so they're not going to go from area to area. So again, we want to limit the amount of trucks and the amount of truck traffic in any one area. So just because, let's say they finish Tuesday, they're not going to start on Wednesday or flip things around without first communicating with the public, nor secondly, getting the okay from the city. So we think that's a pretty big deal. So I think, oh, this might have been, sorry, it looks like I might have done 2 here. So collection of recycling materials. Let's say we saw them putting recycling materials into the back of a garbage truck. That would be $5,000 per incident. Misrepresentation of records or reporting, 5,000, and then failure to provide required reports, $500 per day late. So just a reminder of what those penalties were. And the question I think for you guys as the committee is, are those fees and the items that are included in the fees reasonable, or should they be modified? Should we make them higher? Are there other ones that we might want to consider? And then should penalties go to citizens in some or all of those cases? Some of those might be kind of tough. You know, it's not like the missed pickup is definitely tied back to a property, but some of these, and maybe like the customer issues, but leaking fluids might go into a general kind of penalty reimbursement to the city that we could use for another purpose. And then finally, are opt-out provisions reasonable, or should they be modified? So this relates to, this relates to the fact of, do we want to consider that the way that the opt-out is set up, or should we set up different parameters for that going forward?
All right. Thank you.
Be happy to answer any questions or open up the discussion.
We currently have 3 panelists with hands raised, 4. So I'll just go in order. Marcy, I don't know if we're going to be able to hear you, but I do see your hand raised. I'm not hearing Marcy, so Jeff is next in order. Jeff?
Yeah, on the penalties, I think they're very strong. I think the key here would be communicating to residents and streamlining a method for reporting and documenting these penalties, and what is required to be provided in that. But I do think these penalties are something that, you know, your average household couldn't get one of these if they were calling a provider for a missed pickup, et cetera. Maybe they'd give you a credit if you fight with them. They certainly wouldn't have to. But I think the ability to have some teeth in this potential contract with penalties, in particular the recycling one, I think is very strong. There have been reports of that I've seen on Nextdoor of recycling being dumped into garbage. But if we want to keep a hauler honest, I think putting a financial penalty on that is key. I just would add that, so for the numbers of the penalties, I think they're fair. I think 150 per pickup, that's going to be more like 2 quarters, I think, for that household. I do think it would be nice if there could be some mechanism to funnel some, if not all of these penalties back to those impacted, or perhaps to lower income residents who may not be able to, or may have difficulty paying. I think being able to reuse and show a benefit on that side would be fantastic.
Thank you, Jeff. Next in the order is Carson.
Thanks. So I really like the strength of the penalties. There's a couple things that I think, I've brought up that I feel strongly that the status quo way of someone having to wait on a phone or wait for a chat, to me is, if we're taking away choice from citizens and doing this, we should make it to where citizens don't have to waste their time waiting for someone on a phone and having measurements around that. They should be able to submit if they want to do it that way, fine. I'm sure there's some people who choose that, but to me, that's enough that I would wait a week. If I had to make a phone call and sit on hold, I don't want to deal with it. I want to fill out a form and submit it and know that it's their responsibility to respond and deal with it. So, I think the structure of the customer service request needs to include a better way for citizens to not have to wait on a call or wait for a chat. On the amount of the money for these, I mean, what the breakdown that Director DeAndrea said of the only two that really could be passed through to the citizen are missed pickup and customer service failure. And, you know, I like the idea that was brought up by, I'm not sure who brought it up last time, the concept of some of the money going to support people who have trouble paying. But I think that at least a portion of it should go to the person who's impacted. So, you know, so I suggest maybe splitting it, you know, half of it going to the person impacted, half of it going to a fund that is used by, you know, those who have trouble affording it. The other one that I strongly feel, you know, it's based on the RFP, but I have, you know, a lot, we've discussed many times that yard waste only happening a couple times a year or as a extra that you have to pay for, I'm strongly against. And so, you know, I think it's important that I like the idea of having the yard waste be able to be picked up as a, you know, going to the most appropriate environmental place, but it needs, if you had branches break or you needed to deal with yard waste, you need to be able to put that out with your trash the way you currently can and have that go wherever it goes with the trash. You know, I get the environmental benefit of doing it the other way, but it's not enough to take away the choice of people who need to deal with that on a regular basis and shouldn't have to pay extra for that. Right. And I think there's going to be, beyond just me, people not happy with that. So the structure of that one, I think, needs to change.
Okay.
Next in the order is Kanji.
Yep. Thanks, Stephen. I just wanted to double click on what Jeff was saying. I agree. Like the funds should go to the lower income, as well as, I guess the biggest question was who monitors and who enforces. So I don't know the logistics on that, like who's actually enforcing the penalties and sending out the bills. Again, logistically, Carson, I don't know if we would be able to split that. I think the administrative fee would almost make it impossible if we were going to try and split the fees on that. And I think, oh shoot, there was one more thing I was going to say and I totally spaced it. I'll circle back. Apologies.
So I see Marcy with her hand raised again. Would you like to try again, Marcy? I'm not hearing anything from Marcy. I'll take this opportunity to comment myself. On the subject of administrative fees, the schedule looks pretty good. Particularly the quiet hours violations, which is something that really sticks in my craw personally. If it was up to me, it would be $47 million per occurrence, but I know that's not reasonable. The one concern I have with the question of fees going directly to residents is whether or not the law of unintended consequences would show its ugly face here, and it would incentivize false reporting. If I wake up in the morning at 9 o'clock and I put my trash can out and I know that it's supposed to be out at 7 and the trash truck comes at 7:30, and then I call and say they didn't pick up my trash, do I get $150 because I woke up late? So something to consider. Not saying that everybody would do that, but it is possible. Carson, I see your hand is raised again. I'll yield the floor to you at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Chair Ward. I was just going to say that, I mean, I don't know, being a programmer, technically there's absolutely no reason it couldn't be done. And it's the part of where I'm coming from is seeing this as, a lot of people I know are going to see this as taking away choice, and anything we can do to make this a better deal for them is going to help make citizens who are against this whole concept be more likely to be for it. And, you know, I'm even pulling back my beef with the opt-out, considering it's, you know, $2. I've listened to everyone, you know, say the value in that. I still feel like on the opt-out fee that the reality is if we go forward with this, no one's going to be able to get alternative service. There's not going to be a provider that's willing to provide service to random single households here and there throughout the city for a better deal than whatever this ends up being if the city moves forward with this. And that's the perspective I came from on arguing that why even have the opt-out fee, because it's just going to, you know, be something that people push back on. But it being only $2.05 and knowing that it's very unlikely that people would be successful, I accept that. But on the inconvenience of, you know, having the pickup missed and having to deal with reporting that, you know, I get what Chair Ward said about potential abuse, but I think we can do better than nothing. Whether it's, you know, I don't see it needing to be $150 and maybe something that's incentivized for people to try and abuse it, but maybe it's, you know, if it is legitimately believed that, you know, generally the provider is going to be able to confirm if someone reports a missed pickup, whether it was missed or not. And obviously if someone's doing that over and over, then, you know, it would be stopped. We're not going to be paying people a bunch, but I do believe the impact of being affected by that and having to deal with that should get you something, whether it's next quarter free or what.
Thanks, Carson. Kanji, your hand is raised again.
Yeah, apologies. I do remember what I was saying. My hope that this is actually just a stopgap in the long game would be that we actually create our own service like Denver does, because I don't think out of anything that we do here, there's no way we're going to get everything we want. Until we have our own service, we're going to be beholden to a servicer. So that was it. Thanks, y'all.
Christine?
Yeah, I wanted to chime in that I agree with what you all were saying, that the penalties are both strong and fair. And I think having the penalties in place will actually be a very key advantage for the single hauler program as a whole for the city. And another reason that we should strongly consider pursuing this route, because whether or not the penalties go to the individual household that was impacted, the company itself now has that much more of an incentive to meet the performance standards and to not have missed pickups or leaks or trash on the street, etc. As far as the amount of the administrative fee, I wanted to suggest that we talk about exempting low-income households from the administrative fee. And then I had two comments on the conversation earlier. One is that in the responses to the RFP, one or both providers mentioned that they specifically document if someone does not have their trash out. When they go by, they make a note to say this address did not have trash out. So I think that would kind of fix that disincentive that was mentioned earlier. And then second, I also liked Vice Chair Green's suggestion for a simple form or button push to mark a missed pickup. It's worth noting that in the penalty fee, there's a maximum of a 2-minute hold on the phone, which is very impressive and something that individual citizens cannot get now. So a 2-minute hold would be awesome. I still think it would be good to add, like you were saying, a simple form or a button push.
Marcy, I'll just say, I still see your hand raised. If you are able to get your microphone unmuted, you can start talking at any time and I will call on you. So you don't have to wait for me to say your name over and over again. But I want to make sure that you do have the opportunity to speak if you can overcome whatever technical issue is occurring right now. And Brenda, you're next in the order.
Yeah, first I'll say to Marcy, Marcy, if you're using a laptop with a mouse, be sure to take your mouse and drag it down to the left-hand corner, and your mute button will pop up. And then there's a little arrow there for a variety of ways for you to check your microphone. There's a test button. Okay, so what was I going to say? Oh, in regards to the way in which they will interact as a customer service agent, there's nothing in the contract that says that they have to provide an online kiosk or, press a button. That's something we have to put into an RFP. Right now, it sounds like it's assumed that their current call center setup is going to be as is, right? I mean, yeah, that's it. Okay, so if we want to make changes like that, like ask them to have an online chat or anything other than just the telephone, we need to put that if we redo the RFP. We discussed that last week. And in addition to putting other things on the RFP, I'll just mention this, even though it's maybe a little off topic. We're discussing fees and stuff today, but there is such a thing as a fully electric trash hauling truck. New York City is rolling out fully electric, and I saw one other city is doing it also. They're manufactured in the US. Now, we don't know how many trucks they're going to roll out for this many tons. I was going to try to do the math for what, 10,000 tons? Was that a year? But anyway, if we did put together another RFP, we could tell our prospective companies that we would be willing to award them a long-term contract if they provided fully electric vehicles, and that would be a real feather in our cap. We'd be some of the first city in the nation to do it. One of the first. Other cities are doing it.
Thank you, Brenda. Chairperson, you are next.
Thanks for saying that, Member Hubka. And just to add on to that, I'll find the link and send it to Chair Wards to be able to spread out to you guys. But I just read a really interesting article about San Francisco, and maybe Member Kwanabe, if I remember right, you might have lived there, but they have gotten really progressive, and their trucks pick up 3 containers, trash, recycling, and composting, and weigh them all and charge you less if your waste is less than your recycling and compost. And like, it's, I'm not saying that that's going to be available to us, but that is already available in the US, not just in Ireland, which I had told you guys about previously.
Thank you, Carson. Anybody else have anything to offer in this section?
Yeah, no, I can talk to Carson. I didn't live there. A lot of our clients are out there, but I know what you're talking about. And I think, again, it goes to that the city owns the service. And so they can be super progressive on that. So I think the end game, if we can start funneling those funds to creating our own service over the next 5 years, that would definitely answer, I think, all of our questions.
Cool. Thanks for clarifying.
I see Christine.
Another reason we might have difficulty with that approach is the size of our alleys versus the size of the trucks that could do that. But if it were possible, I agree that would be very awesome and maybe worth asking them about. And then on the comment about electric trucks, I agree completely. And the state has had in the past few years, and I expect would continue to have ongoing cyclical grants that would cover the incremental difference between a diesel truck or bus and an electric version. In the past, they'd offered those grants 2 or 3 times a year that cities would apply for. And so that's something that we could keep our eye on to see if we could apply for that or encourage the respondents to apply for that. I don't know how that would work into either the RFP or a contract, but it's worth some thinking about.
Anyone else have anything to offer on this section? All right, Maria, the next part.
And if you wouldn't mind, Chair, if I could just go back to Vice Chair Green's question about the salaries, I'd like to call that up.
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you all see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Am I still muted?
Nope, we got you.
You can see
Okay.
it.
So just quickly here, you can see the breakdown that got to those totals of the 210, 500. So these are based on, again, kind of typical, these two positions we have already within the city, the billing specialist and customer liaison, code enforcement person. And then the program coordinator, we've kind of assumed that based on some other positions. So you can see the earnings there. That's the wages per year. And then the benefits, we had to guess a little bit. So code enforcement, because it's part-time, they don't receive any benefits. And really the benefits become, it's somewhat of a question mark because they might opt for family, which would incur more cost by the city versus a single person, that sort of thing. So we kind of take a little bit of a conservative approach kind of on the higher end. So some of those benefits may come down depending on what those positions might opt for. And then the taxes are employer-related taxes related back to the earnings. So that's how the breakdown for those costs. Any questions on that? Otherwise, I'll move forward. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. And then I think the next item, we were going to talk about review of the proposer's responses to the questions. So we had included those there, the responses back from both Waste Management and Republic, and then Republic had provided sort of a more expansive explanation of their why they wanted to charge basically everybody who's opting out of the program a fee. So I didn't prepare any kind of presentation for that, but I would just open that up for questions or comments from the group, things to consider as we move forward.
So I'll open that up. I think your description earlier of a no-go for the mandatory opt-out fee that Republic wants to charge is probably about the best way I can put it. That's a contract killer in my opinion. Anybody else have any comments? I see Brenda's hand raised.
Well, you mean the opt-out fee by Republic in addition to the city's opt-out fee? Is that what you meant, Stephen?
Yes, correct. They want to charge something like $15 a month just to opt out of the service.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, we can't have that. The city should have an opt-out fee, but no, that's ridiculous. What do they need to gain from charging customers for not servicing them? I don't even understand that. It's my cats, they're bored. That's all I had. Lower hand.
So do we need to review the question and responses from Waste Management? I know some of that was done in the last session. Does anybody have anything that they would like to review in that area?
Well, let's make sure we've all got that open and just kind of breeze down it. Give us a chance. Everybody got that link open? I'm trying to get it open. It's a lot.
I can pull that up here.
Please do.
Will we be issuing another round of questions for the providers, or will we wait until the RFP goes out and receive more responses before we send them the next round of questions?
Well, yeah, I would think that if we're going to redo an RFP, we would then just hold off asking questions until, we've got a better idea if we're going to redo an RFP. Then
That would be how I would do it as well. And I see Carson's hand is raised.
Oh, I was going to ask Director Dandrett, did you happen to ask like the city attorney or get any insight on what we talked about last time? I mean, would we have to reject the current proposals and then start over like you thought we might?
Yes, I was going to say that for the next item, but we can talk about that now because it might help our discussion on this item. So I was able to talk to the city attorney, and if we proceed with another RFP, which we had that unanimous vote, we would need to reject all of the existing proposals that we received from the two vendors. So I think to your current discussion, I don't know that there's much value in continuing the discussions because with these two providers at this time, because we really, sounds like there's a lot of elements to the RFP that we would want to change and flesh out maybe even more so. And so I think the questions that we've received will really help us in that regard, knowing where they're coming from, but I don't know if there's much more that we could gain from continuing the discussions with them, but that's totally up to you guys too.
Well, we may have a handful of questions that would apply regardless of if it's this RFP or a future RFP. In other words, not number specific. The only downside I think would just be an extra step for the providers to answer them.
I see Matt's hand currently raised. Matt, did you have something to add?
Yeah, and this is probably more relevant to the next point, but we're kind of getting into it now already. I did do some financial analysis based on what I'm currently paying, and then just using both proposals. Based on just a 3% year-over-year increase, except for a 4% for Republic, which is what they're requesting. Basically, so I'm using Waste Connections. Compared to Waste Management, the price is basically exactly the same. It's within $1. And Republic is actually $90 more. So from a financial standpoint, and that's not including the fee the city would charge for the administrative fee. So basically, we would incur that additional cost on top of what we're already paying for the service. Now, I understand Waste Connections is giving certain people discounts, but given that it seems like Republic has serious issues, including the opt-out fee for certain people who are not using the service, I don't know that I would move this, but I think we should probably seriously consider a new RFP, just because I don't think the financial benefit is there.
So that kind of rolls us naturally into our next issue item. So I'll just go ahead and call that item as part of the agenda now. I see two other hands, Carson and Jeff.
Jeff, go ahead first.
Yeah, I'm just curious procedurally, does this committee have the authority to reject an RFP, or is that something that would have to be done by council or staff separately?
May I answer that, Chair Ward?
Absolutely. I think I know the answer, but please go ahead.
Yeah, so as part of that, just going to actually share this other screen with you. The idea would be, in talking with the city attorney, is that is the decision of the city council to reject those bids since they came to the city. What the committee would provide is a recommendation to the council to say, and I'm trying to find that here. Here we go. I've typed out the words a little bit. Can you all see that? So it's that the city council would recommend to the city council, the citizens committee would recommend to the city council to, one, reject all of the proposals received from providers for the garbage and recycling collection and disposal, and instead issue a new RFP for services, and the committee would provide the suggestions for inclusion in the new RFP. So they would have to act on that.
That looks like the track we're already on, so I think we're headed in the right direction. Carson, did you have something to add?
Only that there were a few questions that I had put in the list that didn't end up going out to the providers. That like one of them was just kind of in regard to the whole what actually gets recycled. You know, since China stopped taking our recycling and stuff like that. But I think this would come up later. It doesn't necessarily need to be done now. And then in regard to I had one more thing. Anyway, yeah, I'll think of it. The direction that you're going makes total sense to me.
Ray, can I ask, just out of curiosity more than anything else, how common is it for a process to occur like this, where a company or a municipality puts something out to bid and the bids come back and they say, well, we don't really like those, so we're going to reject them and we're going to put it out to bid again?
I think this is, I would say it's rare, but typically we also don't have a citizens group, you know, giving a lot of comments either. So I think it's it's a very unique contract. So it's not like a typical construction contract or service contract that we might provide that does a very specific thing for a short period and then we end it. So this is a long-term, you know, business relationship with a company. And so I think in fairness to the city, while we did go through this process and the goal was to come out with good proposals that would meet the needs of the city and our citizens, that we think that we can maybe refine this and do a little bit better job and maybe come up with different parameters that might not only reduce the cost, but flesh out and give more detail around some of the elements that have been up in the air in terms of policy questions, like the opt-out program, like the green, you know, green waste and how we collect that sort of thing, and the whole alley versus street thing too. So if that's a significant cost, maybe the committee wants to truly talk about that, and if we still want to keep that direction or go in a different direction where it's maybe just alleys if you have an alley, streets if you don't have an alley, something like that.
Thank you. Carson, I see your hand raised again.
Yeah, I just remembered the other part, just kind of off of what I appreciate what member Adams said in the price comparison. And I agree. I mean, the price we're looking at, it's not unreasonable. I mean, it's more than I'm paying right now with yard waste included every time. So I feel like but it's improved in that it's alley service for both trash and recycling. I think about, like, you know, what kind of objections are going to come from citizens, and, you know, some citizens are going to look at it like what they're paying because they signed up for the waste services thing and they're not doing recycling. So they're going to say their price is $16 a month, you know, guaranteed for a couple years. So, I mean, that's partly what we're competing with, at least to some degree. I mean, I appreciate the, you know, the push on the environmental benefits of this, from encouraging recycling to, you know, all the others that we've all talked about. But since there isn't, at least as structured now, an option to opt out of recycling, and you know, the base price now is looking at, you know, $24. It's just something to be aware of, and otherwise everything else I'm on board with.
So that brings us to the action item. If nobody has anything else in the way of comments, I think now would probably be a good time for us to take a vote on what we want to do relative to a recommendation to council. So if someone wants to craft a motion, I would be happy to hear that. Go ahead, Carson. You have your hand raised.
Yeah. So I propose a motion to recommend to City Council that we reject the proposals received from the providers for garbage and recycling, as we've received them, with the goal of issuing a new RFP that we would all work on, starting with what was already done and then modify it to include what we've all, come towards wanting to include, and potentially structuring it to hopefully get more providers to participate. I don't know that I need to reiterate all the things we've talked about, like potential different numbers of years and potential different structures of street versus alley, et cetera, different service levels and customer service structures, et cetera. But so I propose that we, that's my motion.
So if I might take a moment to
Go ahead.
sum that up as I heard it. A motion to reject the existing proposals that we have received with the intent to craft a new RFP on the basis of the feedback that we've received to date.
I accept your friendly succinctness.
I second.
I'm sorry, who was that second?
Matt Adams.
It's been moved and seconded. Lorraine, will you please take the vote?
Chair Ward,
Yes.
Vice Chair Green,
Yes.
Member Adams,
Yes.
Member Borman, Member Borman,
Yes.
Member Brinker.
Yes.
I see Member Brown back on. Can you unmute Member Brown? Member Frazier,
Yes.
Member Hupka,
Yes.
Member Kawanabe,
Yes.
Member Lade. Member Lade?
Yes.
Hey, Lorraine, I think Member Brown is able to raise her hand. You could maybe ask her to raise her hand if she wants to say yes.
That was going to be my suggestion as well. We'll just give Member Brown a moment to click the raise hand function. If she chooses to vote yes on the current motion, then we'll enter that vote into the record.
It looks like she dropped back off.
Hmm.
All right, well, we will have to mark her as absent for this vote then. So I believe that was unanimous. Is that correct?
Yes.
Excellent. So we have some remaining items on the agenda with the time that we have left.
And I'm sorry, Chair Ward, can I interrupt?
Absolutely.
I wouldn't mind, since that motion passed, is if we could talk a little bit about schedule. So I can probably get that back on the council's agenda, probably on December 7th. So we could use, and this is again up to the committee, is how quickly you want to do this, but I think we have some large items to discuss. So let's say, I think Carson kind of or Vice Chair Green summarized some of those, the opt-out program. How do we want to structure that in the new RFP? Alleys versus streets, or both? Green waste, how do we want to handle that? Some of those big items. So I would like to take probably 1 or 2 meetings to talk through that, incorporate that into the document, any other topics that we might want to consider, send that final document out for everybody's review before we put it out on the street, assuming that City Council wants to move forward. So I guess my question is, what is your desired timeline to have those meetings to talk about the actual elements within the RFP?
So I see Jeff Frazier has his hand raised at the moment. So Jeff, you have the first bite at that apple.
Sure. My first question was going to be when we do submit this to council, and I assume Director DeAndrea would provide the reasoning. You know, we want to get additional price structures, and we had additional in talking about the service. We'd explain that thoroughly to council, I'm guessing. As to the director's question, my preference would be to move forward quickly so we can try and discuss opt out, you know, different issues that we would want to include in a second RFP if so authorized by council. I'd like to try and hammer out as many issues as we can thoroughly so we can try and push for the best deal possible for citizens if council approves it.
I actually concur with that. So that would be my plan as well, is to continue meeting on the current schedule to discuss some of these things we can hash out. And then if we go on the December 7th council agenda and they just tell us to stop, then we'll stop based on that. I did see one other hand raised. It looks like it's gone down at this point.
Okay, thank you. And we can continue to talk about schedule. I just wanted to throw that out there. If there is a desire to wait until after the first of the year, or in general, just keep pushing through knowing that we're coming up in the holidays now.
As much as I would like a break, I think we've come so far. I mean, we're halfway up the mountain and now we just have to climb down. So that's why I'm in favor of continuing.
I would like to say I'm in favor of continuing. We just need kind of a broad outline, if you will, of these topics that we want to take up and how we want to put it in the RFP. But yeah, it's going to take us a while to hash all that out, so we might as well keep going and work around the holidays the best we can.
Maria, do you want a formal vote on that?
No, I don't think that's necessary. I think the question is, so 2 weeks from now would be November 23rd. Do we want to hold that meeting? That is the week of Thanksgiving. I do have a council agenda item that I'll have to drop off for a little bit. I always do. So, but we can certainly, or you can lead that discussion and I can follow up out the time that I'm off to talk or hear the discussion.
So personally, that's the day before my birthday, and I have that entire week off work. I haven't taken Thanksgiving week off work in over 10 years. So I'm actually looking forward to some rest, but I don't know how anybody else feels about Thanksgiving week. So speak up.
Well, I'm not traveling anywhere.
Yeah, I vote for skipping Thanksgiving week.
So do we want to move it to the 30th?
Yeah, I think we can just take a straw poll on this one if that's okay. So I'll ask anybody who would like to take the November 23rd meeting off to please raise your hand. So raise your hand if you would like to skip November 23rd. I think we might be split here.
I can go either way. I'll raise my hand if it makes y'all feel better. I really don't care. It's okay.
So I see one dissenter, I believe. Christine?
I'm happy to have a meeting by myself. No, I'm just kidding. I don't feel strongly. That's why I didn't vote.
Okay, so I don't know, again, if we need to take a formal vote on that, but the majority of panelists have consented to taking the November 23rd meeting off as a much needed holiday. So I think we will plan on skipping that, and then that would resume our meeting schedule in December. And what would that next December meeting date be, Maria?
That would be December 7th. So that could potentially be the night that we're discussing it with council. So again, I would need to just jump off the call to be in that discussion, but you guys could continue. I don't need to hear it in person for that short time that we'd be off.
And if we have a topic list, I think we could do fairly well on that.
We could certainly develop an agenda and give you some of those broad topics to start working through, and basically have a series of topics so that could roll over into future meetings depending on how far we get each time we meet.
What about, I think the following week from Thanksgiving is November 30th, if I'm looking at my calendar right. What about that week?
That's also a no council session night, isn't it?
Yeah, that's no council that night, so I could definitely be available for that if that worked for other people.
And then Jeff, would you propose going to the regular every 2 week schedule through December after that?
I think I would, if after the following meeting, we feel like we need to have more discussion on things like opt-out provisions. I think we could probably make a decision at the end of that next meeting if we were to meet the week of November 30th.
I'm just looking at the schedule here. That would be November 30th, December 14th, and then potentially December 28th.
Works for me.
Which of those are council meetings and which of those are study sessions? Because we're still trying to hit the study session Mondays, right?
I think that puts us back on the study session schedule, doesn't it?
It does,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And I had just called up, I know we had done that little poll. So it looks like everybody was available on December 14th. And on December 28th, the only person who had a hard no was member Kawanabe. That may have changed since the poll, but that's what we had.
More of a soft no, now that we're not going anywhere.
Jeff, you have your hand raised? I think Jeff might have just left his hand raised. So I actually like that schedule. And if we don't need to vote on that schedule, we'll just plan on doing that going forward. So we would skip what would be a regularly scheduled meeting on November 23rd. Then we would meet on November 30th, December 14th, and December 28th as our business needs required.
Sounds great.
Are there any objections to that? You can raise your hand if you have an objection to that particular schedule. Or speak up. Excellent. All right. So that pushes us going forward. We've got the meeting schedule. I see an informational item, number 6E on the agenda. Maria, did you have something to offer on that?
So as I mentioned, we had done that doodle poll after, I believe it was the last meeting. So we had some dates there for some hard no's, but it sounds like that's worked out. So I think this is a great schedule going forward. And then I'm sorry, did you say D or E?
E, sorry.
Oh, E, sorry. Yeah, so the informational items. So there is, if you have a chance, we attached the board and commission's policies handbook. If you want to read through that, feel free to, of what some of the roles and responsibilities of board and commission members are, which would also apply to this committee if you're interested. So that's really just informational. And then the committee, if you recall, we had discussed adding any of the emails that I've received or corresponded with the providers. And I've included all of those. So we had several back and forths with both of them, as well as one open records request. So all of those are included in that attachment. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about those documents.
Can anyone hear me?
Hey, there you are, Marcy.
Oh, you can hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Been trying my best. I've just kept dialing and dialing and dialing. Sorry about that, but could I, Chair Ward, can I say a few things?
Yes, we've already passed a number of items on the agenda and voted on our official actions going forward. But if you have comments to offer, since you missed the remainder of the meeting, I'll give you that privilege.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've done everything here to try to get in, so I apologize. But I guess what I'd like to know is, Maria, did you say that we were going to get $350,000 for a franchise fee or tipping fee?
That's the amount that we have to pay to get rid of what we collect in terms of garbage. If you collect, they estimate 10,000 tons for all of the households in Englewood, and then that's what we'd have to pay in addition to dispose of those. So right now that's included in your individual bills, and we excluded that cost purposely in the RFP.
Okay, so the tipping fee and franchise fee, are they different? I'm kind of confused here.
Yeah, and I
Because-
apologize because I keep using poor wording choices. So the tipping fee is what anybody pays when they go to a facility and dispose of waste. So that's called the tipping fee.
And Maria, who receives that? I'm sorry, who receives that tipping fee?
That goes directly to whoever owns the facility. So the place on Union Avenue is owned and managed by Waste Management, so they would receive all of that. Then we receive, because that facility is within the boundaries of Englewood, we charge them a waste disposal fee, and I forget now, I forget the term, but then they pay us 50 cents per ton back because they're using our roadway system and our road network to basically serve their facility. And then we collect those fees and they go into the general fund.
Okay. And then I just have one more question. Like some years prior, before we started talking about one trash haulers, Englewood was receiving over this amount, which I'm finding interesting. And then on a Cora request asking about franchise and tip fees, it says trash haulers, this is what the city clerk gave us, trash haulers in Englewood must have a trash hauler's license, which is renewable annually. Under that license, each hauler is required to pay $75 per truck. Trash haulers are charged no other fee for operation by the city of Englewood. So I'm kind of confused. If Englewood only charged them $75 per truck per year, how did Englewood make so much money off of these kind of fees?
So let's just say there's a company called ABC Disposal. So they pick up garbage from a variety of sources, maybe not in Englewood, maybe in Sheridan or Lakewood or wherever, and they bring it to the facility, the waste management facility at Union. So they pay a tipping fee to Waste Management. And then company XYZ brings materials there. They pay a tipping fee to Waste Management because they're disposing of their materials there. So we have, because they're picking up materials in Englewood, they would pay just their license fee, but then we would get that service fee back from Waste Management, but it would come from all those different sources who have paid through their tipping fees. So we only get that amount back from the one company, Waste Management, who owns the facility.
But don't you think if the city received more, like some years ago, quite a bit more actually, that we're taking a downturn if you're only saying 350,000?
Here, let me just call up that, if I can, just call up the summary of questions that I put together, if I can find that right terminology.
And I'll just add here, Marcy, I get how this relates generally to trash, but I'm not sure I understand how it relates to the business of the committee.
Well, because I think that, that if we are reducing the amount that the city is taking in from some years ago, I think it does have something to do with this committee, because we did have a one trash hauler back then, and it seems the information I received that we were making quite a bit more money by not having a single hauler trash.
But we don't have a single hauler now.
No, I know. That's exactly what I'm saying, Chair Ward, is that we are making quite a bit of money from my paperwork that I have here. So you don't think don't we want to have more income coming into Inglewood than less?
That's not necessarily the goal of this committee, but I do see a hand raised. Jeff Frazier.
Yeah, I'd just ask that the information be shared with the committee that's being referenced as it relates to the purpose of this committee.
Okay.
In the interest of transparency.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so what I'm pulling up on the screen, if you recall, there were a variety of questions from the Citizens Committee, and I tried to summarize those all into one document. And so this was the response. So just starting at the top here, what does the city receive per ton by the trash collectors for tipping fees from the Oxford Waste Transfer Station? What is the account number in the city's budget? So we receive 50 cents per cubic yard, and the account is a waste transfer surcharge. So that's really the right term. So the tipping fee is what any company that goes to the Oxford Waste Transfer Station pays to dispose of their trash. The waste transfer surcharge is what the city receives from Waste Management from 50 cents per cubic yard for anything that's disposed at the Oxford Waste Transfer Station. So again, I'm mixing up terms, but up here then you can see in 2018 we received 805,000. In 2019 about 812, and we try to be conservative, but we budgeted 775,000 for 2020. And all of that money goes into the city's general fund. Does that help, Marcy, or clarify that?
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, Maria, I'm sorry I'm getting confused, but you said like around 350,000. So are you saying that in 2021, that amount that says now for 2020 is 775, but in 2021 it's going to go down to 350?
No. So right now, part of that's, so whoever you have for garbage pays a tipping fee if they take it to Oxford Station, they pay a tipping fee for that portion of your garbage that they collect and take there. Then we get a portion of your tipping fee back, and that makes up the 775,000. So if we were to go to an organized system where we had one provider, they would pay Oxford Station 300, we're estimating 350,000, and then the city would get back 50 cents per cubic yard, which I've not done that math, but then what would be the assumption of what we would get back would be a portion of this 775. So I don't think the number would change, because we're still roughly, I'm assuming, taking all of the garbage from Englewood is going to Oxford Station. Maybe not, maybe that's a big assumption, but just because of the proximity, it's probably close. But so we don't anticipate this changing at all or very much, because if we were to go to a single collect source.
I think I've got the disconnect here, if I'm understanding correctly. That 775 number is not just Inglewood trash. That is all the trash that goes to the Oxford Station. So the $350,000 estimate would be just Inglewood trash. Am I hearing that correctly?
It would be what we paid to Waste Management, but they would keep a good portion of that, because now they've got to deal with the trash. We would only get 50 cents per cubic yard back.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's where the disconnect is. We're comparing apples and oranges. So this amount is for all the trash in the area, and the 350,000 is what we would pay to Waste Management to dispose of the trash that comes from Inglewood.
And then we would get a portion of that back.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for letting me speak.
All right. So we were on the item 6E, and I think that was just informational, the board and commission's policies. If anybody has any comments, I'll entertain them now. Otherwise, we will move on to item number 7. Item number 7 is chairperson's choice. I'd just like to reiterate my thanks to Carson for covering for me last week. I had some personal items to take care of, so I appreciate that. That's all I have. So we'll go on to number 8, committee member's choice. Raise your hand if you would like to speak during this portion of our time. Carson, you are first.
Oh, I was just going to say no problem. Hopefully I did all right.
Jeff.
I'd just like to say really briefly that I think this has been a really productive meeting, and I think we're working really well as a group right now. And I appreciate both Chairman Ward and Vice Chair Greens facilitating the meetings. I think we're staying organized and on top of it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of good deal we can get, hopefully.
Thank you. And anytime you want to compliment us, Jeff, you can just raise your hand and I'll call on you right away. Marcy, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is there, does anyone on the committee feel that this should have gone to a ballot instead of us deciding for our citizens and our community? Thank you.
All right. I think I see Carson's hand raised.
Yeah. So, Member Brown, what I would say in regard to that is, if this had just gone to a ballot, then it probably would have been written as kind of simple, like, should Inglewood go to single provider? And if that passed, then none of the nuance that we're going through as this committee would have been taken into account. And the city would probably just, if the vote passed, then they would just do an RFP without so much public input, and we wouldn't necessarily get a better deal or all of the things that we want. And I think that by doing it this way, we've got the perspectives of people who care primarily about the environment. We've got people who care primarily about citizen money, and then the whole spectrum in between. And it's not like we're making the choice for citizens. We're making a recommendation to city council based on all the discussion that we've been going through and all this input that was taken in from the people who showed up at those meetings, and then the group of us that care enough to be participating in this. So I feel like if it had gone to just ballot without all the nuance of everything we're putting into this, and now that we've chosen to redo the RFP, I feel like that even supports this position more. So I think citizens are ultimately going to get the best possible outcome from this, because by making the RFP that covers all the things we care about, maybe we won't get a deal that makes sense, but really we're just making a recommendation to city council as to what they do. And at least by doing this, we're doing better for the citizens than a non-nuanced ballot initiative.
I'll add to that just briefly and say that there's nothing that bars this committee from making the recommendation that it go to a vote of the people either. I don't think anything's been determined on that at this point. Carson, thank you for your comments. Christine, your hand is raised.
I agree 100% with what Vice Chair Green was saying. And to add to that, we have heard from other cities that have been through this process, North Glen, Arvada, Lakewood, etc., that when the issue was on the ballot or going to the ballot, residents were flooded with anonymous flyers and mailers that were misleading, manipulative, and flat out lying. Often they didn't say who was the source of those mailers and flyers, and I'm glad to save us all that headache of going through that. Second, our city council is elected by citizens to represent the citizens, to weigh all the perspectives and determine what's in the interest of our citizens. That's kind of how this is set up. And third, and I think very importantly here, the city council could tweak or revise or undo the program. Whereas if it's voted in by a vote of the people on the ballot, all of the specifics are set in stone and cannot be undone without another vote of the people.
Thank you, Christine. I see Marcy's hand raised again. Marcy, did you have some additional comments to add?
Yeah, Christine, could I ask you a question? I'm sorry. What did you, at the very end, you said that it could not be done unless there
Could-
was a vote of the people?
Could not be
If it went to
undone.
council?
All of the, if it's on a ballot, exactly the text that's in the ballot is what has to be adopted. It can't be tweaked or revised. And since this is kind of a new program for the city, I think it's important that we have a little bit of flexibility, and city council would have that flexibility. But if it was on the ballot, it would be set in stone until another vote took place on the ballot to change the language.
Okay, but we are still considering that people can opt out of this. Am I right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Christine, I see your hand is still raised. Is that an oversight or did you have something to add?
Oversight, thanks.
All right. Is there anybody else who would like to speak during member's choice? Going once, going twice. All right. Well, that concludes our agenda for tonight. Thank you, everybody. It's 7:35 p.m. and I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good
everybody.
night.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday in a couple weeks.